Well, I just came across this on my uh, Facebook wall, and I thought I better do a quick summary of it, even though I shared it on my wall. Um, this is something that I had used to have a domain discussing these issues about Agenda 21. And so a friend of mine, Tom DeWeese, I don't know him personally except through communications on Facebook, and writing some of the stuff that he had, sharing some of the articles he had before. Uh, I think it was a year and a half or 2 years ago that I started following this information. It actually goes back quite a way, so I'm going to read through much of this article and upload it to YouTube as well as share it on my wall. So for those of you that have the time to listen, I'm going to scroll down here and try to begin reading this and see if I get through the whole thing. This was posted about 1 o'clock on the 25th, that's today, okay, on Tom's main website. And he begins the article. I'm going to try to read through most of this, so bear with me. Sometimes if you fight hard enough and refuse to back down no matter the odds, your truth is vindicated and prevails. And this is where AOC comes in, because she's right in line to make this happen with her Green New Deal. So for 20 years, he says he's been labeled a conspiracy theorist, scaremonger, extremist, dangerous nutcase. I've been denied access to stages, major news programs, and awarded tinfoil hats. All because I have worked to expose Agenda 21 and its policy of sustainable development as a danger to our property rights, economic system, and culture of freedom. From its inception in 1992 at the United Nations Earth Summit, 50,000 delegates, heads of state, diplomats, and non-governmental organizations hailed Agenda 21 as a comprehensive blueprint for the reorganization of human society. The 350-page, 40-chapter Agenda 21 document was quite detailed and explicit in its purpose and goals. They warned us that the reorganization would be dictated through all-encompassing policies affecting every aspect of our lives, using environmental protection simply as the excuse to pull at our emotions and to get us to voluntarily surrender our liberties. Section 1 details social and economic dimensions of the plan, including redistribution of wealth to eradicate poverty, maintain health through vaccinations and modern medicine, and population control. To introduce the plan, the Earth Summit Chairman Marie Strong boldly claimed current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, air conditioning, and suburban housing are not acceptable and not sustainable. Of course, according to the plan, if it's not sustainable, it must be stopped. In support of the plan, David Brower of the Secure Club, one of the NGO authors of the agenda, said childbearing should be punishable crime against society unless the parents hold a government license. Whoa, check that out. Let me scroll down a little further. We'll carry on here. Leading environmental groups advocated that the Earth could only support a maximum of 1 billion people, leading famed Dr. Jacques Cousteau to declare, in order to stabilize the world population, we must eliminate 350,000 people per day. Section 2 provides the conservation and management of resources for development by outlining how environmental protection was to be the main weapon, including global protection of the atmosphere, land, mountains, oceans, and fresh waters, all under the control of the United Nations. To achieve such global control to save the planet, it is necessary to eliminate national sovereignty and independent nations. Eliminating national borders must quickly lead to the excuse for openly allowing the natural migration of peoples. The UN Commission on Global Governance clearly outlined the goal for global control, stating, the concept of natural sovereignty has been immutable, indeed a sacred principle of international relations. It is a principle of which will yield only slowly and reluctantly to the new imperatives of global environmental cooperation. That pretty much explains why supporters of such a goal go a little off the rails when a presidential candidate makes his campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." The main weapon for the agenda was the threat of environmental Armageddon, particularly manifested through the charge of man-made global warming, later to conveniently become climate change. It didn't matter if true science refused to cooperate in this scheme, as actual global temperatures really are not rising, and there continues to be no evidence of any man-made effect on the climate. Truth hasn't been important to the scaremongers. Timothy Worth, president of the United Nations Foundation said, "We're going to ride this global warming issue. Even if the theory of global warming is wrong, we will be doing the right thing in terms of economic and environmental policy." So, by any means necessary, huh? This just baffles people, but this is what's going on. And when I say baffles people, the people that follow me on Facebook know that this is not something that is a new thing that I've just started posting about. So we'll try to continue on here. Even if the theory of global warming is wrong, we will be doing the right thing in terms of economic and environmental policy. To further drive home their complete lack of concern for truth, Paul Watson of Greenpeace declared, "It doesn't matter what is true, it only matters what people believe is true." So in their zealotry to enforce a grand agenda, social justice became the moral force over the rule of law, as free enterprise, private property, rural communities, and individual consumption habits became the targets. Labeled as racist and a social injustice, such established institutions in free market economics were seen as obstructions to the plan, as were traditional family units, religion, and those who were able to live independently in rural areas. Finally, Agenda 21 was summed up in a supporting document this way: effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society, unlike anything the world has ever experienced. It requires a major shift in the priorities of both governments and of individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human being be integrated into the individual and collective decision-making at every level. And it goes on. Let's scroll down further here. Of course, such harsh terms had to be hidden from the American people if the plan was to be successfully imposed. They called it a suggestion for voluntary action, just in case the nation or community wanted to do something positive for mankind. However, while using such innocent-sounding language, the Agenda 21 shock troops lost no time pushing it into government policy. In 1992, just after its introduction at the Earth Summit, Nancy Pelosi, our favorite Speaker of the House, introduced a resolution of support for the plan into Congress. It's just interesting to note that she boldly called it a comprehensive blueprint for the reorganization of human society. In 1993, new President Bill Clinton ordered the establishment of the President's Council for Sustainable Development, with the express purpose of enforcing the Agenda 21 blueprint into nearly every agency of the federal government to ensure it became the law of the land. Then the American Planning Association issued a newsletter in 1994 supporting Agenda 21's ideas as a comprehensive blueprint for local planning. So much for a voluntary idea. However, as we, the opponents, started to gain some ground in exposing its true purpose, and citizens began to storm city halls, protesting local implementation, suddenly the once proud proponents lost their collective memories about Agenda 21. Never heard of it. There are no blue-helmeted troops at City Hall, said one proponent, meaning policies being used to impose it were not UN-driven or just local. Oh, you mean that innocuous 20-year-old document has no enforcement capability? This isn't that. These were the excuses that rained down on us from the planners, NGOs, and government agents as they scrambled to hide their true intentions. Scrolling down further. However, no, excuse me, one more paragraph. I was attacked on the front page of the New York Times Sunday paper under the headline, Activists Fight Green Projects, Seeing UN Plot. The Southern Poverty Law Center produced 4 separate reports on my efforts to stop it, calling our efforts an anti-government right-wing conspiracy theory. The Atlantic magazine ran a story entitled, Is the UN Using Bike Paths to Achieve World Domination? Attacked articles appeared in the Washington Post, Esquire magazine, Wingnut Watch, Mother Jones, and TreeHugger.com, to name a few, all focused on labeling our opposition as tinfoil hat-wearing nut jobs. Meanwhile, an alarmed American Planning Association created an Agenda 21 Myths and Facts page on its website to supposedly counter our claims. APA then organized a boot camp to retrain its planners to deal with us using the glossary for the public, teaching them new ways to talk about planning, said the opening line of the glossary. Given the heightened scrutiny of planners by some members of the public, what is said or not said is especially important in building support for planning. The glossary went on to list words not to use like public visioning, stakeholders, density, and smart growth, because such words make the critics see red. Local elected officials, backed by NGO groups and planners, began to deride local activists, sometimes denying them access to speak at public meetings, telling them that Agenda 21 conspiracy theory had been debunked. Most recently, an irate city councilman answered a citizen who claimed local planning was part of Agenda 1 by saying, this is what's trending, so of course if everyone is doing it, it must be right. Such has been our fight to stop this assault on our culture and constitutional rights. Scrolling down further. Over the years, since the introduction of Agenda 21 in 1992, the United Nations has created several companion updates to the original documents. This practice serves 2 purposes. One is to provide more detail on how the plan is to be implemented. The second is to excite its global activists with a new rallying cry. In 2000, the UN held the Millennium Summit, launching the Millennium Project, featuring 8 goals for global sustainability to be reached by 2015. Then, when those goals were not achieved, the UN held another summit in New York City in September of 2015, this time outlining 17 goals to be reached by 2030. This document became known as 2030 Agenda, containing the exact same goals as were first outlined in Agenda 21 in 1992, and then again in 2000, only with a new incarnation explaining more explicit direction for completion. Into the Green New Deal, representing the boldest tactic yet. The origin and the purpose of the Green New Deal couldn't be more transparent. The forces behind Agenda 21 and its goal of reorganizing human society had become both impatient and scared. Impatient at 27 years after Agenda 21 was introduced, and after hundreds of meetings, planning sessions, massive propaganda, and billions of dollars plan is still not fully in place. Scared because people around the world are starting to learn its true purpose and the position is beginning to grow. So the forces behind the agenda have boldly thrown off their cloaking devices and their innocent-sounding arguments that they just want to protect the environment and make a better life for us all. Instead, they are now openly revealing that their goal is socialism and global control, just as I've been warning about these past 20 years. Now they are determined to take aggressional action to finally make it the law of the land. Take a good look. Those of you who have heard my warnings about a 21 over the years, do you see the plan I have warned about being fully in place in this Green New Deal? Scrolling down further. I warned that Agenda 21 would control every aspect of our lives, including how and where we live, the jobs we have, the mode of transportation available to us, and even what we eat. The Green New Deal is a tax on everything we do, make, wear, eat, drink, drive, import, export, and even breathe. In opposing smart growth plans in your community, I said the main goal was to eliminate cars to be replaced with bikes, walking, and light rail trains. The new Green New Deal calls for the elimination of the internal combustion engine. Stay alert. The next step will be to put a ban on the sale of new combustion engines by a specific date, and then limiting the number of new vehicles to be sold. Bans on commercial truck shipping will follow. Then they will turn to airplanes, reducing their use. Always higher and higher taxes will be used to get the public to voluntarily reduce their use of such personal transportation choices. That's how it works, slowly but steadily towards the goal. I warned that under smart growth programs now taking over every city in the nation, that single-family homes are a target for elimination, to be replaced by high-rise stack and pack apartments in the name of reducing energy use. This will include curfews on carbon heating systems, mandating that they be turned off during certain hours. Heating oil devices will become illegal. Gradually, energy use of any kind will be continually reduced. The Green New Deal calls for government control of every single home, office, and factory to tear down or retrofit them to comply with massive environmental energy regulations. I warned that Agenda 21 sustainable policy sought to drive those in rural areas off the farms and into the cities where they could be better controlled. Those in the cities will be ordered to convert their gardens into food producers. Most recently, I warned that the beef industry is a direct target for elimination. It will start with mandatory decreases in meat consumption until it disappears from our daily diet. The consumption of dairy will follow, since the revelation of the Green New Deal. The national debate is now over cattle emissions of methane and the drive to eliminate them from the planet. Controlling what we eat is a part of the Green New Deal. I'm not the best reader in the world, so bear with me. I warned that part of the plan for Agenda 2030 was zero economic growth. The Green New Deal calls for a massive welfare plan where no one earns more than anyone else. Incentive to get ahead is dead. New inventions would disrupt their plan for well-organized, controlled society. So where will jobs come from after we have banned on most manufacturing, shut down most stores, stopped single-family home construction, closed the airline industry, and severely regulated farms and the entire food industry? This is their answer to the hated free markets and individual choice. The Green New Deal will destroy the very concept of our constitutional republic, eliminating private property, locally elected representative governments, free markets, and individual freedom. All decisions in our lives are made for us by the government, just to protect the environment, of course. They've forgotten how well that scheme works to keep the masses under control. Through the label Green New Deal has been passed around global circles for a while. It's interesting that its leaders have now handed it to a naive, inexperienced little girl from New York who suddenly found herself a rise from bartending to a national media sensation almost overnight. That doesn't just happen, and there is no miracle here. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a created product. They probably needed her inexperienced enthusiasm to deliver the Green New Deal because no established politician would touch it. Now that it's been introduced and she is set up to take the heat, the gates have swung open, allowing 45 members of Congress to co-sponsor it in the House of Representatives, as established. Senator Ed Markey has sponsored it in the Senate. That doesn't just happen either. Nothing has been left to chance. Behind the sudden excitement and rush to support it are three radical groups, each having direct ties to George Soros, including the Sunrise Movement, which marks itself as an army of young people seeking to make climate change a major priority. Justice Democrats, which finds and recruits progressive candidates in new consensus, organized to change how we think about issues. Leaders of these groups have connections with other Soros-backed movements, including Black Lives Matter and Occupy Wall Street. According to the New Yorker magazine, the plan was written over a single weekend in December 2018. Let me scroll down a little more here for you. This is a single. This may be the single reason why she is able to appear out of nowhere to become the new darling of the radical left. So there you have it. Agenda 21, the Millennium Project, Agenda 2030, the Green New Deal. Progress in the world of progressive. They warned us from the beginning that their plan was the comprehensive blueprint for the reorganization of humanity, so it is to be the total destruction of our way of life. To all of those elected officials, local, state, and federal, who have smirked at we, who have tried to sound the alarm, look around you now, hot shots. You have denied, ignored, and yet helped put these very plans into place. Are you prepared to accept what you have done? Will you allow your own homes and offices to be torn down? Or will you be exempt as part of the elite, or just useful idiots? Will you have to give up your car and ride your bike to work, or is that just for we peasants? Over these years, you have listened to the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, the World Wildlife Fund, ICLEI, American Planning Association, and many more. They assured you their plans were just environmental protection, just good policy for future generations. They have been lying to you to fulfill their own agenda. Well, now the truth is right in front of you. There's no question of who and what is behind this, and no doubt as to what the final result will be. Now our elected officials have to ask real questions. As the Green New Deal is implemented and all energy except worthless, unworkable wind and solar are put into place, are you ready for the energy curfews that you'll be forced to impose, perhaps each night as the sun fades, forcing factories, restaurants, hospitals, and stores to close at dusk? How about all those folks forced to live in the stack and pack high-rises when the elevators don't operate? What if they have an emergency? How much of energy will it take to rebuild those buildings that must be destroyed or retrofitted to make them environmentally correct for your brave new world? In summary, where will it come from after you have banned and destroyed all the workable sources of real energy? What are you counting on to provide you with food, shelter, and ability to travel so you can continue to push this poison? Because this is what's trending now. And how is it going to be financed when the entire economy crashes under its weight? It really is a future you want for you, your family, and your constituents who elected you. Every industry under attack by this lunacy should now join our efforts to stop it. Cattlemen, farmers, airlines, the auto industry, realtors, tourist industry, and many more will all be put out of business. All should now take bold action to immediately kill this plan before it kills your industry. Stomp it so deeply into the ground that no politician will ever dare think about resurrecting it. For years, I have watched politicians smirk, roll their eyes, and sigh whenever the words Agenda 21 were uttered. As George Orwell said, the further a society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those who speak it. Today I stand vindicated in my warnings of where Agenda 21 was truly headed, because it's not longer me having to reveal the threat. They are telling you themselves. Here's the naked truth. Socialism is for the stupid. The New Green Deal is pure socialism. How far its perpetrators get in enforcing it depends entirely on how hard we are willing to fight for freedom. Kill it now or watch it die.